Yesterday, North Dakota looked more like a war zone than the site of a protest over the construction of a pipeline. There were many protesters, many arrayed against the protesters. Authorities estimated at least 250 protesters who are mostly Native Americans, although Americans have traveled from across the entirety of the country to stand with them. Were at the camp during Thursday's violence. Activists say more than 300 officers moved in with all-terrain vehicles, armored cars, and military-grade Humvees, helicopters, and at least one airplane monitoring the action from above. We have rumors of tasers, of beanbag guns, sound cannons, and other forms of, in some cases, non-lethal force that were deployed against the protesters. But there are many reports of live ammunition being present, although not necessarily used against protesters in this case.
Not necessarily, right? Not used.
Not used. There are reports of shots being fired, which really returned to. The police are all saying that those were from protesters. We have some video. Why don't we actually roll this as we're talking about it? You're going to see a bit of the situation on the ground there. And the photos of the police officers with their mine-resistant vehicles, which I think are amazing, that in another case in America, those are being deployed, standing off against, in some cases, individuals who are there holding up bottles of water, is one of those iconic photos that only protests in America.
Look at the danger those law enforcement officers are facing there. It's unbelievable.
Hundreds of law enforcement.
Mine-resistant? One side.
Mine-resistant, ambush-proof vehicles.
One side is actually digging up the earth and could put things in it. The other side isn't.
Yes. Now, we know that 141 were arrested over the course of the last 24 hours. What happened a little bit earlier in this week is that there had been negotiations going on between authorities and the protesters. Those broke down, and that led to the protesters making their camp on the physical path of the proposed pipeline for the first time. They had not previously done that. They'd always been close to it, but not on it. And that is what led to an incredible amount of force being brought in against them. Now, as we mentioned, there were reports from the police that shots had been fired. Supposedly, a woman drew a handgun and fired 3 shots at a sheriff's deputy, narrowly missing him. We do have this photo, which we're going to bring up, which people are saying is the actual woman holding a prayer stick, not a gun. Of course, many reports coming from both sides. I haven't seen any hard evidence that any revolver was deployed against the police, but that is what they're saying.
It's just the history of these things.
We've seen this.
Is that she didn't have a gun.
Like,
obviously, none of us were there. We don't know. It seems really unlikely that in an incredibly organized protest, one person thought, I'm going to bring a handgun and fire at this incredibly
hundreds of police officers.
Yeah. And I'm going
with
to be
snipers.
And I'm going to be a middle-aged to elderly woman. I couldn't quite see it well enough. And I'm going to have a prayer stick with me, but I'm going to shoot, and then put it back in and get my prayer stick. That is not usually how it goes down. And so, look, and before, these are the same cops who were saying, oh, there might be pipe bombs. We heard reports of pipe bombs. Really?
Yeah.
Might be pipe bombs. If you found pipe bombs, believe me, you would have made literally a federal case out of it. There's no pipe bombs.
James Comey would write a letter saying there might be. We're checking. I'm checking to see the pipe bombs. I heard there might be pipe bombs.
Get back to you in a couple of weeks.
There are 2 additional angles on this that are extremely interesting that Jared Jackson brought to my attention. First of all, it's the diverse sources of the police and the other forces that were waiting for the protesters. And so the Morton County's Sheriff's Department said in a press statement earlier this week that due to escalated unlawful tactics by individuals protesting the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline, Morton County has requested additional law enforcement assistance from other states. The state of North Dakota made an Emergency Management Assistance Compact, that's the EMAC request, to states for assistance on October 7th. You're seeing there a number of different states that they've made that request for. So what is this EMAC? Because I had previously never seen that before. The EMAC program is supposed to be used to allow states to send personnel, equipment, and commodities to help disaster relief efforts in other states.
Emergency management is probably what those are.
Emergency management for tornadoes, for earthquakes, perhaps a super volcano someday in that part of the world. Not necessarily for a couple of 100 water protectors, and yet that's what was used, and they have had those forces come in from a number of different states in the region.
Emergency Management Army Corps, is what I'm guessing.
And apparently coordinating, there's evidence that they've been coordinating with the corporations themselves, not just the police in North Dakota.
So let me clarify 2 of those things. So EMAC was also apparently brought in situations like Ferguson. So it is apparently is emergency management not against natural disasters, but against natural minorities. So if you've got African Americans protesting, well, let's send in those emergency forces. Hey, all the states gather together. Let's go crush those guys. Oh, you've got Native Americans over there in Standing Rock. Hey, all the states. Oh yeah, it's supposed to be for natural disaster. Who cares? Listen, who cares? Come on, we got some Native Americans to go get. Now, on the issue of, by the way, so you can argue with my speculation on their thinking. You cannot argue with where they sent them. They did send them for those things, and that's not where they're supposed to go. That's not the purpose that they are by law supposed to act.
Yes.
Well,
Okay?
can I just throw in, because I just looked at their website. It's super easy to find. It's emergency management assistance compact.
So Army Corps was wrong.
And
I
for
read
example,
it
their
earlier.
press release is that as Hurricane Matthew continues its destructive path along the Florida coast, there are states as far away as California deploying resources to assist Florida. 14 states are helping when they wrote this and said it's growing by the hour. That's exactly what it's for.
but that's exactly
and
what's
all
happening
50
because of the
all
fear-
50 states are in it.
Because of the fear of Hurricane Matthew, forces are being deployed to North Dakota.
So, so now the second thing I need to clarify is: are the cops working with the companies? So are they being one-sided here? Well, the company itself told us that. Now I'm going to give you a quote from Raw Story here. Energy Transfer, which quotes the company. So first, the description: Energy Transfer Partners, the parent company of the Dakota Access LLC, said Tuesday that it intends to work with police to forcibly clear a Frontline's water protectors camp. Energy Transfer Partners threatened that, quote, this is their quote, in coordination with local law enforcement and county and state officials, all trespassers will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law and removed from the land. So the cops aren't going and saying, okay, hey, Army Corps of Engineers, I know that you put an injunction on the company to not build around the Missouri River. And hey, lawyers, I know that there is a question about eminent domain and there's a question about this treaty from 1851. And hey, protesters who live here, let me consult with you guys. Let me also consult with the company and let me make decisions based on the law and the circumstances. No, by the admission of the company, and by the way, the cops constantly talking about, hey, we've been talking to the company. It says they're like the Pinkertons. Like, yes, absolutely.
that's what I thought.
And they admit it. Yeah, we check with the company. Now we will come and crush you. Your claims are interesting. Like, to me, you would know that the cops are unbiased if they lined up on both sides. If they said, okay, hey, company.
And then fought each other.
Hey, no, company, you're not allowed to build in certain areas. We're going to make sure you don't build there. Okay, because that's the federal government told us that you're not allowed to build there. And protesters, you're on private land. So I'm lining up to make sure you're not in the wrong place. But no, the assumption is citizens. Citizens. No, this giant company already gave me my marching orders, and I will bring things that look like tanks. Pretend that you have like snipers and you planted mines, and then you've got pipe bombs,
sonic cannons.
So that's why with the cops, in this particular case, you shouldn't be surprised that we're skeptical of you. It's because of your actions. Your clear, obvious one-sidedness. And when are you ever going to protect and serve the citizens? When does that happen?
Because
We're going to turn in just a little bit to the militia in Oregon and the acquittal of them. I don't remember within 48 hours of them taking over the land, 300 police officers and mine-resistant vehicles sweeping in with dogs and cannons and beanbags.
Right.
Where
They
were
were a
the
bit more
tanks against the
cautious.
Bundys? And by the way, those guys, it was not speculation. It was not maybe a prayer stick. No, they had heavy weaponry. They showed it on video and threatened to murder the cops that came, but the cops didn't come for 41 days. They let them take over federal buildings. They only caught them when they left that area.
Weren't those guys white?
Oh, good point. Good point.
Yes.
Also, but you know what's significant?
I knew I was
real
right
quick,
about
but also significant is that those guys had guns.
Yeah,
and
that's
therefore
true
it cost.
too, yeah.
So I mean, now I don't want them to, but the Standing Rock Sioux, they wouldn't have come as quickly if they'd had guns because they would have had to. But I don't want them to have guns.
I know, and this happens with our insane foreign policy as well. So when we invaded Iraq, there was some good chance that and I'm putting it so lightly, that we knew that they had already disarmed and had no weapons of mass destruction. And one theory is that's why we attacked them. Not because they had weapons of mass destruction, but because they didn't.
Exactly.
Which then provides a perverse incentive for the North Koreas of the world to say, well, I better go get nukes right away. Otherwise, America comes and gets everybody who doesn't have weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
So in this case, as Ben pointed out, for whoever protesters are or whatever race, if you say, hey, the Bundy guys get to put a gun to the cops' heads, and because of that, we don't bother them, right? Okay, what is this message you just send out to everybody? Go grab all your guns and point it at the cops. That's a terrible message. Terrible message.
I get to feel moderately good here because I remember consistently praising the cops during the Bundy thing. Like, I got it. I'm against the Bundys, but I don't want anybody shot. And if you have to wait 41 days or 82 days, you wait it out. You wait. You wait as long as reasonably can to minimize bloodshed. You don't wait forever, but you wait and you do it right. But here, when there is no threat, except for the dangerous prayer stick, they got to mobilize and go.
I want to talk about very quickly one other threat there, because obviously the whole point of all of these protests, I mean, there's a couple of different problems that the tribes and their supporters have, one of which is the possible destruction of newly found sacred ground. But the most important is the possible threat to the water sources of that area, that the fact that the pipeline is going to travel directly under Lake Oahe. And they're concerned that if there's leaks, that could contaminate their sole source of water. Now, many people have made them out to be fear-mongers over that, but newly released information makes their case seem a little bit more understandable. North Dakota recorded nearly 300 oil pipeline spills in less than 2 years. Newly released state documents show none was reported to the public at the time. According to records obtained by the Associated Press, the pipeline spills, many of them small, are among some 750 oil field incidents that have occurred since January of 2012 without public notification. Now, some of those are small in that 20 or 30 barrels of oil were spilled. Some of them were small in that 20,000 barrels of oil were spilled. And almost universally, the one that was reported was when an oil truck collided with something. But in the cases where the actual pipelines leaked, almost universally, 749 out of 750 were never reported to the public. And so if they leaked into Lake Oahe, if they contaminated a portion of the water, would the people in the region even know until they had drunk the contaminated water? We have reason to believe that they would not.
And I would add, what is even worse about that is that, now this is not a liberal organization reporting this. This is the Associated Press, the most respected news gathering organization in the world. So they're out there and they ask state officials, have there been oil spills? Bless their hearts, we're doing real investigation, okay? And maybe there were no oil spills. The Associated Press does not prejudge that, right? And the state wouldn't give an answer. AP's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? There's no oil spills, or you don't know that there's oil spills? For 11 days, state and company officials would not give an answer. Finally, after all the Associated Press pressing on it, they said, okay, fine, there was 300 oil spills and 750 oil spill incidents. Okay?
In 4 years.
In 4 years and
Just like
300
almost
in 2
100
years.
a year.
And then the Department of Mineral Resources
3 days.
in North Dakota, that's the state's top oil regulator, said the regulators worry about, quote, over-reporting spills. Now, why would a regulator worry about over-reporting spills that actually happen? That's because, yes, it is so obvious that the government here is working hand in hand with the private corporations who are running these projects. It's glaringly obvious when they go, no, I don't want to report what the private corporation did. If you're the state, why wouldn't you report it?
Well, they're saying they don't want to report little incidents, right? Isn't that what the word, or I think there was little incidents. But that's what people want to hear about, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it was minor incidents, the minor occasions of oil spills. That adds up.
Little incidents. So let's say, for conservatives watching this, let's do an analogy. Imagine if Lake Oahe was a bowl of Skittles, and 3 of the Skittles were oil. Would you drink out of that bowl of Skittles? The analogy falls apart, but you understand what I'm going for.
Yeah, and so some of them, by the way, were not little. No, they're protecting the companies and not protecting the citizens. That's at the heart of the problem here. So finally, I just want you to be super clear on the 2 main issues here that the folks at Standing Rock are fighting for, okay? So one is to protect the water, and it turns out, and I didn't know the degree to which it spilled. We didn't know it until today. So thank you, Associated Press, for doing journalism, right? So it turns out it spills a lot, and if it spills into the river and that's your drinking water, well, even a little spill is deeply problematic. A large spill is disastrous. So it turns out they were right to be concerned about the water. And by the way, that water doesn't just serve their reservation. There's only 8,000 people on their reservation. No, that's the Missouri River. It serves a lot of people. In fact, the government knows it. The pipeline was originally supposed to go near Bismarck, North Dakota, but the state said, no, spills there would endanger a larger group of people in Bismarck, and we don't want Bismarck to be endangered. So you know there is a danger. You know there is a danger. Send it by the reservation. But the Missouri River goes everywhere. It doesn't just stay there.
Put it under something
live in
replaceable.
Bismarck than the reservation, actually.
Okay, so one, it appears that they were more correct there than they were originally given credit for. Okay, number two, they say that the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851 did not cede that territory, so it might still be tribal land. And are you going to tell me that, no, America wouldn't have cheated Native Americans on a treaty back in 1851? That's inconceivable. If you say that, you don't know anything about history, and you're purposely being blind to it. So I know it's frustrating that it takes a while for the judicial system to work. And by the way, there's, I think one of the rulings there was unconscionable as well. But we've got to figure out, are they right? Are you telling me Native Americans didn't get screwed over on treaties? Like, it is not conceivable? No, of course it's conceivable. I'm not saying they did. We have to adjudicate it. We have to have due process to see whose land it really is. Okay, and we have to have due process on the injunction that the government put on building around the Missouri River. So you can't just have these guys literally bulldoze everyone, and the government and the state and the cops work with them and work against the citizens. That is not the way you're supposed to do it. And look, the Sioux there and a lot of Native Americans across the country are also concerned about the last piece of this puzzle, which is our court system. So they say, oh, no, a district judge ruled. Now, not on the merits of the case, that's going to take a while, but on an injunction. What the tribes there said is, hey, don't build a pipeline until you know that that's really your land, and that, and according to the law, federal law, you have to actually consult with the tribes nearby, even if it's not their land. If they're nearby, and here there is no question that they are nearby, according to treaties that the U.S. has signed, that is inarguable. And the judge in this case, the U.S. district judge, said two things, one of which is defensible, and the other one I don't think is. He says the Army Corps gave the tribes a reasonable opportunity to respond. I don't know if that's true. I don't have the facts on that. I wasn't in the case, so maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Okay, we'll find out in the longer trial, right? The second thing is, he says the tribe has, quote, not shown it will suffer injury that would be prevented by an injunction that the court could issue. Now, if you lift the injunction and they build a pipeline, the case of the tribes are, you're building it over burial grounds, and it's our property because
it might affect our water.
And it might affect our. What do you mean the injunction doesn't affect what's? Of course it does. That's the whole point of the injunction.
So in 3 years we could win when the pipeline's already there,
and already spilled, and already destroyed our burial property, and it turns out it's our land.
Then you remove the pipeline and you put back the sacred, irreplaceable sites.
yeah.
So, no, I mean, look, even if you're skeptical about the justice system, and I can see after this ruling why they would be, at a minimum, you have got to, and I say this to the district judge, you've got to let that play out. You can't decide, before you decide the merits of the case, you can't decide the actual action that's going to happen. Oh, yeah, go ahead and build a pipeline. Who cares? Build it. And then later, I guess I'll figure out if you were right to build it. No, that is not justice. You know who makes independent media possible? You guys. Because of you, we can actually do this show free of any outside influence. That's what makes us so strong. Become a member today. tytnetwork.com/join. You are the media.